In this presentation, we will explore a 21st century literacy, creative thinking. My name is Kathy Rojevich. Currently, I am an English teacher at Wausau West High School. And so, I think that in many ways, one could argue that preparing today's students for their futures is a task much more challenging than that of our predecessors. The public school setting has been evolving from the place that held the keys to all knowledge to a setting that promotes and develops not just knowledge, but also skills and conceptual understandings that will ensure students find success. As Ryan Hargrove argues in his research on creative skill development, it is even more important for them, the students of today, to be creatively prepared to go beyond the ideas of the present and deal with the complex social and environmental issues facing this world. Although the skills that have been deemed 21st century skills are not necessarily unique to the modern world, Elena Silva, a senior policy analyst for education sector in Washington, D.C., argues that they are newly important. She states, today's workers in nearly all sectors of the economy must be able to find and analyze information, often coming from multiple sources, and use this information to make decisions and create new ideas. Today's students need to be able to create new ideas. The question and challenge for educators is to determine how to get kids to create new ideas. How do we get them to think creatively? What can educators do to develop and promote creative thinking in today's youth? How can we inspire our students to explore new ideas so they go places beyond the limits of our own capabilities? Like in this cartoon, okay? Our own limitations in the sense that sometimes we limit students in forcing them to do things in a certain way. So, to develop such a skill can be difficult, especially at a time when preparing students for success seems so focused on standardized test results. Right? This is a time where schools must make difficult decisions about what standardized or what teaching methods are most effective and which lessons are most purposeful in order to reach certain benchmarks. What we must first have is an understanding of creative thinking. In order to understand this particular literacy and how the role of the librarian can support its development in students, we will explore the following questions. What is creative thinking? In what ways can educators continue to develop creative thinking skills in youth? And then how might lessons directly aimed at creative thinking skills impact student learning outcomes and future success? So let's begin with defining creative thinking. Creative thinking or creativity is a skill that is demanded by today's companies. As companies around the globe try to make the most of their resources while they keep their costs down, they are in need of creative incoming employees who will bring fresh, new perspectives to their respective fields. Actually, a study by Shabalina et al. Finds that the demand for creativity is ever increasing and appears among the 5 skills most valued by employers. It is difficult to define creative thinking because so many different definitions of this concept exist. While discussing his book Originals, How Nonconformists Move the World with NPR's Alyssa Nadworny, Adam Grant explains that to be creative, kids must become comfortable with the idea of taking risks. They must be prepared to indulge their curiosity. They must be confident in allowing their minds to wander. After all, creative thinking is a result of a variety of cognitive abilities. Therefore, creativity researchers, going back as far as 1950s, have identified a number of abilities that are characteristic of a creative mind. Some of those characteristics are divergent thinking, or the ability to generate a variety of ideas. It's having insight, cognitive flexibility, and perspective taking. Ryan Hargrove, who studies the metacognitive approach to developing creativity, argues that creativity is really a metacognitive process. He argues that creativity is the result of a deep understanding of one's own thinking process, that by having such an understanding, individuals allow for more new and more complex or creative ideas to develop. In a sense, this is when individuals begin to think outside the box, so to say, when they are truly creative. Although most individuals would agree with the idea that creativity is thinking outside the box, some researchers argue that this is much more complex. In his article, Converging Paths, researcher Michael Hansen suggests that thinking outside the box for one individual may very much be inside the box for another individual, okay, as illustrated in this particular cartoon. As a result, the definition of creative thinking is much more complex. It is a multi-level cognitive process, one difficult to teach and assess at a time that is characterized by uniformity of standardized testing. So where do we go from here? Okay. If creative thinking is a complex cognitive process, how do we, as educators in public schools, help our students develop these skills? There is content to teach. How are educators to teach creativity on top of everything else? Creativity researchers do emphasize that the extent of one's creativity in a certain area is related to the amount of knowledge one has about that topic. In their research, Sciavolina et al. Acknowledge that when an individual has the ability to decode their knowledge of a topic and share through interaction and collaboration with others, a creative response is more likely to occur. Therefore, content is important and cannot be ignored. So, what are ways to develop creativity in students? One way in which educators can help develop creativity in students is to model that process to them. Educators must reflect on their practice and abilities and take advantage of professional development opportunities to be able to demonstrate to their students that they are more than just promoters of knowledge and creativity. We must demonstrate to them that we adapt to new ideas, that we adapt to technological advances, and we are creative with our own practices. In their research, Sciavolina et al. Argue that educators who try innovative teaching methods will nurture students' motivation and interest in learning. Innovative teaching methods that include technology and focus on developing independence in learning are more likely to lead to student creativity. These researchers also suggest that allowing students to reflect on learning on its meaning will lead to the development of creative thinking skills. This idea is also echoed by the research of Ryan A. Hargrove, who states that when educators help students develop an awareness about their own thinking and learning processes, they are helping students think about the effectiveness of the strategies they use in reaching the goals they have set. This long-term strategy of planning what is to be done, monitoring our progress, and evaluating the results is an effective way of helping students take more control of their own thought and feeling processes. Therefore, in order for students to be creative, they must first take control of the learning process. This will prove to be most effective in their futures as well. If educators engage students in activities that require reflection, educators are creating lifelong creativity skills in those students. Reflective activities can range anywhere from asking students to keep a journal to document their learning process, modeling reflection for students, a paired problem-solving challenge, or even conducting case studies of expert creators so that students have an opportunity to examine others' creative processes. In this way, reflection will promote authentic creative thinking. Finally, educators must not forget why they entered the teaching field in the first place. Michael Hansen, head of the Department of Human Development at Teachers College, Columbia University, states that the path to creativity is through education and not the other way around. He argues that teachers who excite kids about learning are the educators who can show students how exciting and interesting the world is. By exposing students to those ideas, educators continue to inspire students to learn more about the content, to challenge themselves to understand the subjects that are being taught. And once they own these ideas, take them to the next level by what Hansen describes as participating in change throughout society. So, teaching practices that are rooted in innovative methods, reflective opportunities, and passionate deliveries have the opportunity to positively impact student learning outcomes. Research indicates that students who are able to think divergently as children continue to be creative thinkers during adulthood. In their article, Effects of Web-Based Creative Thinking, Teaching on Students' Creativity and Learning Outcomes, Chang Lin and Ryan Wu explained that the results of their creative thinking research led to the conclusion that creative thinking teaching could stimulate students' creation potential and promote creative thinking performance. However, this is based on the collective efforts of educators in a public school setting. Practitioners who emphasize creative thinking ability. If educators, teachers, and librarians alike continue to emphasize the creative thinking process in their teaching and allow students to apply or to allow students to reflect on that process, they will be developing creative thinking skills that students will be able to apply in an infinite number of situations. Ryan Hargrove argues that by actively engaging students in the practice of both knowledge and regulation of cognition, they are able to build conditional, declarative, and procedural knowledge that leads to the creation of new ideas. That is what we want kids to be able to do, create new ideas. By being immersed in this type of education, our students can develop the skills they need to be successful in their own lives. To conclude, being creative is quite often overly simplified. Too many people, creativity is the ability to come up with a new big idea. However, research indicates that creative thinking is not an innate trait, which adults happen to stumble upon when that $1 million idea happens along. Instead, creative thinking is a skill developed in kids through the passionate, reflective, and engaging educational experience they have while in school. And if that experience is effective enough, it will carry into their adulthood. So we don't end up like the individual in the cartoon on the slide. However, as long as educators continue to strive to create experiences where students are challenged in the various subject areas and are asked to reflect on their learning processes, we will continue to develop creative thinkers, which is, as research shows, vital for our continued personal and professional development in today's competitive world. Thank you.